The whisper before the storm. The air that morning held an unusual stillness, as if time itself had taken a breath and paused. It was Monday, May 19, 2025. A date circled in red on calendars across spiritual communities and quiet corners of the internet. The sun had barely crested the horizon, casting golden rays over the small village of Shantara, where silence was a sacred teacher and the wind was known to carry whispers from the divine. Elliot, a 38-year-old schoolteacher turned monk, stood barefoot on the cold stones outside the Temple of Still Waters. He had been waking at dawn for nearly 7 years. Yet this morning felt different. He didn't know why. He couldn't explain the tingling at the nape of his neck or the pulse of warmth in his palms. All he knew was that today felt like destiny disguised as an ordinary day. As the temple bell chimed once, deep and resonant, he heard the words again. Not from outside, but from within. 6 doors will open. 1 life will transform. He had first heard this phrase in a dream the previous night. In the dream, a luminous figure cloaked in indigo light handed him 6 scrolls, each marked with a number: 22, 9, 21, 37, 16, and 77. The figure had smiled gently and said, "The numbers are not luck. They are language. Learn to listen." Elliot had awakened with tears in his eyes. Not from fear, but from recognition, somewhere deep in his soul. He knew. This wasn't just a dream. It was a calling. Sparkles the message in numbers. Elsewhere in the world, thousands of people were awakening to a similar vibration. Some saw repeating numbers on license plates, digital clocks, or receipts: 2222, 7.77, 9 o'clock exactly. Others felt a sudden urge to clean their homes, release old grudges, or sit silently with thoughts they had long avoided. All across the globe, something unseen was moving, gently nudging people out of their comfort zones and into a deeper flow. What united them was not belief, nor background, but a quiet inner knowing that something important was about to begin. In a quiet apartment in Tokyo, a single mother named Yumi held a handwritten note her grandmother had left her. It read, "When you see the number 21 3 times in one day, look to the east and ask your heart what it wants." That morning, she saw it on her train ticket, her breakfast bill, and the digital screen in the lobby of her office. In Cape Town, an aging jazz musician named Saul received an unexpected message from a long-lost friend, sent exactly at 9 a.m. It simply said, "Let go." And in the coastal town of Monterey, California, a tech executive named Alina watched the ocean waves as her smartwatch vibrated with the time: 7:07 a.m. For no reason she could explain, she whispered aloud, "I'm ready." Milky Way beyond coincidence. Across spiritual circles, Buddhist monks, mystic teachers, and numerologists had all been speaking quietly of May 19, 2025, not as a date of apocalypse, but as a rare energetic alignment, one where intention, awareness, and destiny would briefly intersect. The 6 numbers, 22, 9, 21, 37, 16, and 77, were not lottery tickets. They were not shortcuts to wealth. They were ancient archetypes, spiritual keys that, when understood, could unlock the deepest vaults of inner wisdom and material alignment. Each number carried a story. Each story carried a challenge. Each challenge was a doorway. And each doorway was waiting to be opened. Man in lotus position, the journey begins. This is not the tale of miracles falling from the sky. It is the story of 6 strangers, from 6 walks of life, whose lives were about to converge. Some of them would meet. Others would never know the others existed. But all would experience the same thing, a personal awakening through the numbers that found them. Together, we will follow Elliot, Yumi, Saul, Elena, and 2 others as they each encounter one of the 6 sacred numbers, through dreams, signs, choices, and pain. Along the way, we will uncover Buddhist truths, moments of silence that change lives, and the eternal dance between surrender and manifestation. So breathe deeply, dear reader. Set aside what you think you know about luck and wealth. For what lies ahead is not a trick of fate, but a calling from the soul. Chapter 1, 22. The Master Builder. The number came to Elliot like a whisper stitched into the fabric of everything. He saw it in the stone steps of the temple, 22. Always counted, never forgotten. He noticed it on the donation envelope placed gently at the altar that morning. $22. Crisp and exact. And later, as he swept the walkway beneath the Bodhi tree, 2 and 2 dragonflies danced in the air before him, crossing paths in what looked like an infinity symbol broken in half. But it wasn't until he sat in meditation that the number 22 revealed its true meaning. That morning, the incense curled more slowly than usual, as though the air itself were hesitating. Elliot's breath became shallow, then deep, as he drifted past thought and into the realm beyond words, a place he had only occasionally touched. There, in that soft space between waking and sleep, a vision formed. A vast golden staircase stood before him, impossibly tall, stretching into a sky painted with stars and ancient suns. At its base stood a figure cloaked in white, their face ageless, their eyes like still water. The figure extended their hand and spoke just 3 words. Build from stillness. And then, Elliot saw it. Carved into every step of the staircase was a glowing number. The first step, 1. The second, 2. All the way up to step 22, which shimmered like molten light. He knew then. This was not just a number. 22 was a calling. Prayer beads the weight of a sacred number. Later, Elliot sat with Master Anan, the eldest monk in the temple and the only one who had ever spoken of numbers as more than math. Elliot's voice was hesitant. Master, may I ask about a number? About 22? Master Anan opened one eye. Ah, the builder. You've heard its song. Elliot nodded. More than that, I saw it. I felt something awaken in me. The old monk smiled as if he had been waiting years for this question. He pulled a tattered scroll from a wooden box by his side and unrolled it with care. Inside were hand-drawn symbols, ancient numerals intertwined with lotus petals and mountain ranges. He pointed to 22, encircled by gold ink. This is the number of the Master Builder. It comes to those ready to create not just for themselves, but for the world. Elliot blinked. Create, what? Bridges. Master Anan said simply. Between the seen and unseen. Between the spiritual and material. Between purpose and power. But I'm just, Elliot hesitated. I left the world. I'm no longer building anything. Master Anan's eyes twinkled. Ah. But the staircase never disappears. Elliot, it waits for the builder to remember they still have hands. Brick the foundation of doubt. That night, Elliot could not sleep. The vision haunted him. The words, build from stillness, echoed between his ribs like a distant drumbeat. But with each beat came questions. What was he meant to build? Why now? Was he even worthy? 7 years ago, Elliot had walked away from a successful life. Once a respected architect in New York City, he had designed high-rise buildings, eco-housing, even a spiritual retreat in Bali. His name had been known. His inbox had overflowed, but the price had been his soul. After losing his younger sister in a tragic accident, a faulty balcony he had approved, he had left it all. Fame, clients, city lights. He had wandered until he found the Temple of Still Waters, where he now lived in service and silence. So why now, after so long, would the universe come knocking? He stepped out into the night, barefoot and unsure. The stars overhead pulsed in silence. Somewhere far off, a bell rang once, soft and clear. He sat beneath the Bodhi tree, the same one he had swept under earlier, and stared at the stone path. His eyes counted again, 1, 2, 3, until he reached the 22nd stone. And there, carved faintly into its surface, as if waiting for years to be noticed, were 3 symbols: a circle, a triangle, and a heart. Suddenly, something clicked in him. Build from stillness. Not buildings, not glass towers, but perhaps foundations of peace. Structures that served the soul. Could it be that 22 was calling him back to the world, not to escape it, but to remake it? Scroll the letter. The next morning, a letter arrived, not by courier, not by post. It had been slipped beneath the temple gate during the night. No return address. No signature, just his name. Elliot. He opened it slowly. Elliot, you do not know me, but I know you. I was a client of your firm once. Before you disappeared, you designed a community center I never got to build. Life got in the way. But your vision, it stayed with me. It whispered to me, especially this year. I always felt that design was meant for more than concrete. This week, out of nowhere, the land I once lost was offered back to me, 22 acres. I want to build something sacred now. Something that heals. A center where the spiritual and the material can meet. Where people can reconnect, breathe, and remember who they are. And I want you to design it. If this letter finds you, and if your heart says yes, meet me on the 22nd of this month. There is a plane ticket enclosed. Come only if your soul agrees. A friend of the future. Elliot stared at the letter, his heart pounding. He didn't need proof. He didn't need a name. The number, the timing, the dream, it all pointed in the same direction. 22 had come not just to whisper, but to lead. Airplane departure. The departure. On the morning of May 22nd, Elliot packed a small bag. Master Anand met him at the gate. The builder's path is heavy, he said, placing a hand on Elliot's shoulder. But it leaves the lightest footprints. Elliot bowed. I'm afraid. Good, the old monk said with a grin. Fear means the path matters. As the plane lifted into the sky, Elliot watched the clouds drift like sacred mountains. In his hand, he held the design he had drawn the night before, a circular sanctuary, shaped like a lotus, with 22 meditation alcoves around a central fire. He didn't know if it would be accepted. He didn't know what lay ahead. But for the first time in years, he felt like his hands remembered how to build. Key meaning of the number 22, the master builder. In numerology, the number 22 is known as a master number, a vibration of immense power and spiritual responsibility. It combines the spiritual insight of 11 with the practical grounding of 4. Becoming a bridge between vision and form. It asks, what are you building in the world? Do your creations serve your ego or humanity? Are you ready to bring heaven down to earth? The message of 22 is simple yet profound. If you dream with clarity and act with integrity, what you build can outlast time. Chapter 2. 9. The number of endings. Elliot had not been on an airplane in over 7 years. The hum of the engine was foreign now, like the drone of a forgotten life. As the clouds rolled beneath the wings and the sun filtered through the window, he thought of everything he had buried, the man he used to be, the skyscrapers he had once sketched, and the guilt that had hollowed him out like a cathedral left to ruin. But now, something stirred. Clutched in his hands was a second letter. It had been waiting in the seat pocket before him, unmarked, as if placed there by fate itself. He opened it slowly. Elliot, before you can build anew, you must first let the old die. You carry weight, memories, shadows. This is the cost of being human, but it is not the destiny of a master builder. The number 9 has entered your life now. It is the number of endings, of closure, of sacred release. In the days ahead, you will confront the ghosts of what once was. Do not run. Let them speak. Let them go. To build from stillness, you must first burn what no longer belongs to you. The voice of 9. He exhaled, and then he wept, quietly. Unseen. He didn't know how, but he felt it. This number, this chapter, was about letting go. Headstone, the city of ashes. The plane landed in San Francisco. It was a city Elliot knew well, once a playground of design, competition, and glory. Now it felt cold, haunted. As he walked through the terminal, the overhead lights buzzed too loudly. The floor tiles seemed to reflect his past self back at him. Sharp shoes, sharp suits, eyes that never rested. He took a cab to his hotel, a modest lodge by the bay. And that night, the dream came. He stood on a shoreline littered with blueprints, thousands of them, fluttering like feathers in a storm. Each bore his name, each carried a flaw, a missing support, a cracked beam, a balcony, like the one that had killed his sister. In the dream, she stood beside him, not as he remembered her, but older, as if time had continued for her in another realm. Her eyes were soft, forgiving. You couldn't have known, she whispered. But I was careless, Elliot said. I rushed the job. I signed the papers. She smiled, sorrowful but sure. You did, and now you know better. But guilt is not a foundation. He collapsed to his knees. I don't know how to move on. She touched his heart, then let me go. And just like that, her form dissolved into golden smoke. The blueprints ignited, and Elliot screamed, not from pain, but from release. Fire, the sacred bonfire. The next morning, he took a walk to Ocean Beach. There, beneath the whispering pines and the cry of gulls, he lit a small fire. He had brought with him an old leather folder, his last remaining sketches from the past. The final blueprints, the final guilt. He whispered a prayer over them. Something Master Anan had once taught him. May what is no longer mine be returned to the fire. May what is no longer truth be released from form. May I rise lighter. The pages curled, smoked, turned black, then white. Ashes drifted into the wind. Some caught in his beard, some dancing away across the waves. And Elliot, for the first time in 7 years, felt clean. Sun arrival at the land. 2 days later, he met her, the woman who had sent the first letter. Her name was Isabel, and she stood barefoot on the 22-acre plot that overlooked the valley like a forgotten garden waiting to bloom. She had long silver hair and eyes like polished stone. There was a calm to her, but also fire. She hugged him like they'd known each other lifetimes. "I'm so glad you came," she said, simply. They walked the land in silence for a while. Wild grasses bent in the wind. A hawk circled overhead. Then she spoke. "I want to call it the sanctuary of return. A place where people come to release their burdens and remember who they really are." Elliot stopped. The words hit him like lightning. They mirrored what his soul had only just begun to feel. "I think," he said, voice catching, "I was meant to build this for you." Isabel smiled. "No," she said gently. "You were meant to build this with me." Numbers, the power of number 9. As night fell, Elliot returned to his notes and journal. He had begun sketching already, circles within spirals, walking paths shaped like infinity, water features aligned with lunar rhythms. But his heart returned to the number 9. In numerology, 9 is the number of endings, of closure, of soul evolution. It represents the end of a karmic cycle, forgiveness and wisdom gained through pain, letting go of what no longer serves, preparing the spirit for its next, higher task. It is the number of the old soul, the one who has been through it, but who does not let pain calcify into bitterness. The message was clear. Before you can build heaven on earth, you must first bury your ghosts. And Elliot had done just that. Person in lotus position, a new piece. That night, he sat in meditation under a tree near the edge of the property. He no longer saw visions. No letters. No ghosts. Just wind. And a quiet voice inside that said, "You're free now." Chapter 3. 8. The number of power. The moon was full, hanging low and golden over the valley. Elliot stood beneath it, barefoot on the land that now pulsed with possibility. There were no machines yet. No beams of steel. No blueprints pinned to boards. Only ideas. Dreams. And the raw earth. But in his chest, something ancient had awakened. It was not peace. Not yet. It was power. High voltage, the shift in the wind. Elliot had thought power was what he once had, back in the city. The contracts. The acclaim. The way people said his name like it had weight. But that was egoic power. Fragile. Dependent on titles, money, reputation. And when his sister died, it all shattered like glass. But this was different. Standing there under the moonlight, Elliot felt connected not to control, but to capacity, not to dominance, but to direction. It was a deeper knowing. One that said, "You are the storm. You are the silence after the storm. You are the mountain who does not bow." This was the power of 8. Repeat button, the infinity loop. Later that evening, Isabel laid out 2 small wooden tiles beside the fire. Each bore a symbol, one of them the number 8, rotated like a lemniscate. The infinity loop. She spoke softly, as if decoding a cosmic language. 8 is the number of power, but not the kind the world craves. It is spiritual strength, tested and forged. The balance between the material and the divine. Justice and manifestation. Flow and discipline. She traced the loop with her finger. It is also the test. She added, the number of karma returned. What you send out will find its way back. Especially now. Elliot listened, transfixed. Was this why his past had returned to him in dreams? Why it demanded resolution before he could truly build again? Briefcase, the architect returns. The next morning, Elliot sat at the fold-out drafting table in his small cottage. The sun rose over the eastern ridge and filled the room with golden light. He reached for his pencil and began to sketch, not as he once did, with fury and perfectionism, but with presence. The curves of the sanctuary. The silent geometry of the meditation halls. The reflecting pools aligned to solstice light. And the octagonal tower at the center, a chamber with 8 walls. 8 pillars. 8 windows. It would be called the Chamber of Stillness. It would be built not to impress, but to amplify energy, to hold power, to channel it. He could already feel it humming in the soil. Classical building. The Council of Builders. That week, a small team gathered, an engineer from Bali, a permaculture expert from Costa Rica, a stonemason from Montana, and a silent monk from Bhutan. Elliot had not summoned them, they had found him. All had received dreams. All had been called. They met beneath an ancient oak and shared stories over tea. "We're not building a retreat," Elliot said finally. "We're building a temple, a power center, a place where people remember that power is not taken, but awakened." The monk nodded, eyes closed. The stonemason grinned and whispered, "This land is alive." Prayer beads. The meaning of 8. Later that night, Elliot wrote in his journal, 8 is not loud. It does not yell or boast. It does not climb. It holds. It carries weight. It balances force with wisdom. It is the infinity loop, closed, eternal, connected. When we build with 8 in mind, we don't build to conquer. We build to sustain, to honor, to last. He closed the notebook and let the silence fill the room like sacred incense. He had spent years fearing power, associating it with corruption, arrogance, and loss. But now, he understood. True power is still. True power is service. True power is source connected. And it was his once again. Cyclone. The test. The test came quickly. A group of wealthy investors from the city reached out. They'd heard about the sanctuary. They offered millions. They wanted to expand the vision, add resorts, helicopter tours, monetize the teachings. Elliot stared at the offer on his laptop. It glittered, seduced. But then he remembered the loop. The number 8 returns all things. And if he accepted out of fear, ego, or lack, what would return to him? So he closed the laptop and sent one word. No. Sparkles. The tower begins. Weeks passed. Wood arrived. Stones were cut. The foundation was blessed in ceremony. The chamber of stillness began to rise, 8 walls forming a circle of sacred geometry. The team worked in harmony. No one rushed. No one barked orders. They moved like prayer in motion. One morning, Elliot stood at the center of the rising tower. Sunlight streamed through the east-facing opening. He could feel it, an invisible column of energy rising from the earth to the sky. It was not just a building. It was a beacon, a bridge, a place where the divine and the grounded could meet. Crystal ball. And then came the vision. On the 8th night after the walls were finished, Elliot had a vision. He stood on a mountain. The temple behind him glowing in starlight. Below, the valley stretched for miles. He saw millions of people, souls in pain, searching, wandering, but slowly, they turned toward the tower. Drawn not by advertisement, but by a frequency. He heard a voice, not external, but within. You will not speak for the sanctuary. It will speak through you. Build it not to teach, but to remind. Those who enter will remember who they truly are. They will leave carrying light in their bones. Elliot awoke, shaking and full of awe. He now understood. He wasn't just building for the earth. He was building for eternity. Chapter 4. 7. The Sacred Path. The sun rose slowly over the distant peaks, casting a golden veil across the valley. Morning mist hugged the ground like a prayer. Silent and sacred, Elliot stood barefoot at the entrance of the chamber of stillness, his hand resting gently on one of the 8 stone pillars. It was quiet, but not empty. The structure now vibrated with energy, and at its heart was a new number. A new lesson. 7. He whispered it under his breath as if it were a secret name. 7 is the seeker, the pilgrim, the bridge between heaven and earth. National Park, the call to journey. That morning, Isabel approached Elliot holding a weathered scroll. "This was given to me by my teacher," she said. "He told me to pass it on when the 7th step had been reached." Elliot unrolled the scroll. Inside was an ancient map, not of terrain, but of inner landscapes. It showed 7 spirals, each leading to a point of light, each spiral marked with a symbol, a word: truth, silence, surrender, forgiveness, revelation, trust, union. At the bottom, in fine script, only the seeker finds the source. Only the silent hear the voice. Isabel placed her hand over his heart. "You must walk now, Elliot, not to escape, but to deepen." Pedestrian, the pilgrimage begins. He left the next day, alone, with only a satchel, a staff, and the scroll. The sanctuary continued to rise behind him, entrusted to the others. This was not a departure of abandonment, it was a sacred pilgrimage. The number 7 demanded solitude. It asked questions no crowd could answer. Elliot knew the journey would not just be over land, but through layers of self. Mirror Spiral 1. The mirror of truth. He climbed a narrow path through the pines until he reached a pool of water high in the cliffs. There, he looked into the reflection and saw not his face, but every lie he had ever told himself. "I'm not ready. I'm not enough. If I succeed, I'll lose love. If I fail, I'll lose worth." The water shimmered, and a voice, his own, whispered, "These are not truths. They are protections. Thank them. Release them." He wept at the edge of the pool, and the spiral turned. Evergreen Tree Spiral 2. The Grove of Silence. Deep in the forest, Elliot found a stone circle, ancient and untouched. He remained there for 3 days and nights in complete silence. No food, no fire, only the sound of wind in the trees and the wild rhythm of his own heartbeat. In that silence, memories returned, of his sister's laughter, his mother's hands, the moment he had drawn his first building as a child. The silence wasn't empty, it was overflowing. He realized how much he had spoken to fill the void, how often he had answered before listening. In silence, he wrote in his journal, "I hear the divine." Person in lotus position Spiral 3, the Temple of Surrender. He came upon a hidden monastery carved into a cliff face. The monks welcomed him without words. Here, Elliot was asked to let go of control. He was given chores: washing the feet of the elders, sweeping leaves, planting seeds without knowing if they would ever grow. One elder smiled and handed him a stone. "You do not build by force," the elder said. "You build by yielding." It was here he surrendered his blueprint for the sanctuary, not because it was wrong, but because he was finally ready for co-creation, not control. DNA Spiral 4. The Gate of Forgiveness. On the 21st day, Elliot met a traveler on the path, his father. Or rather, the vision of his father. Long since past, they sat by a fire. The father spoke of absence, of pride, of fear. Elliot cried, not for what had been done, but for what had never been said. He placed a rock in the fire. "I forgive you," Elliot whispered, "and I forgive myself." The stone cracked in the flame, So did his heart, but open. This time. Milky Way Spiral 5. The Sky of Revelation. At the highest ridge of the mountain, Elliot sat beneath a sky untouched by light pollution. He stared into the stars until they became symbols. Messages. He saw constellations not named in books. He saw the sanctuary, already completed, glowing with light and laughter. He saw a line of pilgrims coming from all corners of the world. But then he saw something else, a shadow. Circling. A false teacher. A manipulator who would try to twist the sanctuary's purpose. The stars blinked. And he heard. Not everyone drawn to the light comes in peace. Stay awake. Candle Spiral 6. The Test of Trust. Descending the mountain, Elliot was met with a storm. Wind howled. Trees snapped. The path vanished in rain. He lost his bearings. His staff broke. For hours, he wandered in the dark. But in that dark, he remembered. Trust is not knowing the way. Trust is walking anyway. He walked, step after step, and just before dawn, the path appeared again, leading back to the valley. Sun Spiral 7. The Union. On the 49th day, Elliot returned to the sanctuary. But something was different. He did not feel like the man who had left. He had shed the architect, the sun, the seeker. What remained was the soul. The team greeted him in silence. They saw it too. That evening, he entered the chamber of stillness. It was complete. He stood in the center and closed his eyes. And he whispered, 7. The sacred path. The union of soul and soil. I remember who I am now. I am not the builder. I am what is being built. Shooting star. And so the sanctuary awakened. From that moment on, the sanctuary was no longer a project. It was a living entity. It welcomed the broken and the bold, the curious and the quiet. And Elliot no longer guided it. He simply listened, because 7 had taught him. You are not the voice. You are the vessel. Chapter 5. 3. The Trinity Within. 3 is the triangle of creation. Thought, word, and deed, mind, body, and spirit. It is the code of manifestation. The song of the universe made visible. The chamber of stillness thrummed with a new energy, lively, spiraling, rhythmic, where the sacred number 7 had once whispered of introspection and the solitary path. 3 now danced into the space like a child spinning in sunlight. It was Elliot who felt it first. Then Isabel. Then the walls themselves began to hum with geometries unseen. Globe the sacred triangle appears. It happened during a rainstorm. Elliot, sitting in meditation at dawn, opened his eyes and saw 3 lights forming above the altar. One blue, one white, one golden. They floated, then fused, then rotated in perfect harmony, forming a triangle of moving light. The 3 points pulsed in rhythm, like a heartbeat synchronized to something cosmic. Elliot gasped as he heard, "This is the Trinity within you. The builder, the dreamer, the witness." Each voice sounded different, yet familiar, as though echoing from his past, present, and future selves simultaneously. Writing hand the return of the blueprint. 3 days later, Elliot retrieved the scroll he had once buried during his surrender. To his astonishment, new lines had appeared. The blueprint of the sanctuary had evolved. Now it revealed 3 inner sanctums, each shaped in a perfect triangle. The Hall of Intuition, to honor the unseen. The Chamber of Expression, to give voice to truth. The Garden of Action, where thoughts bore fruit through service. Each was aligned with one of the lights. Each formed part of the greater whole. The sanctuary was not just a temple. It was becoming a living equation. Cyclone the spiral of creation. Isabel gathered the group. There's something happening in the energy grid, she said. Every pattern repeats in threes. Cycles are accelerating. Dreams are becoming reality faster. And intentions, both light and shadow, are manifesting at record speed. Elliot nodded. It's the law of three. He whispered. 1 is the seed. 2 is the tension. 3 is the creation. They saw it in their own lives. A thought of healing? It brought someone in need within hours. A casual word of love? It triggered reconciliations long overdue. A moment of doubt? It echoed as fatigue in the body. The world had become responsive, almost alive, and they had become creators in real time. Face mask the 3 tests. But with creation came consequence. Elliot began to notice 3 recurring challenges, each reflecting one aspect of the Trinity. 1. The mind's illusion, the dreamer. One night, he had a vision so vivid, of the sanctuary becoming a global empire, of wealth, of praise, of control. It was intoxicating. But when he awoke, his heart felt hollow. The dream had no soul. It was creation without conscience. He wrote in his journal, "Not every dream is divine. Some are echoes of the ego in disguise." 2. The tongue's temptation, the builder. Later that week, a powerful investor arrived, offering limitless funding. With one condition: full branding rights and control of messaging. "We could be in every city by next year." The man smiled. But Elliot felt the warning in his bones. A word spoken from fear or vanity, even in small doses, could poison the whole stream. He politely declined. "Truth," he said, "must remain unbranded." 3. The body's impulse, the witness. Then came a woman. Magnetic, mysterious. She claimed to be a seer sent by the stars. She stirred something primal in Elliot. But Isabel, watching silently, later asked, "Is your attraction awakening your wisdom, or distracting it?" He sat with that question for hours. And finally replied, "Desire is not the enemy. But it must bow to clarity." He thanked the woman and let her go. Dove the integration ceremony. To honor the sacred Trinity, the community held a ceremony of threes. Each member brought 3 objects. One that symbolized a thought that changed them. One word that freed them. One action that had healed someone else. They placed these in the 3 inner sanctums. The hall of intuition filled with feathers, photos, and dreams on parchment. The chamber of expression echoed with mantras and songs and whispered prayers. The garden of action bloomed with tools, seeds, and worn-out shoes from long walks of service. As they completed the circuit, something miraculous happened. The triangle of light reappeared, but this time in every sanctum simultaneously. Each person heard the same whisper: "You are not fragments. You are not 1/3 alive. You are the triangle, the Trinity within." Up triangle, the revelation of the Trinity. In his final meditation that night, Elliot saw a vision. A triangle made of living fire. Each point lit by a different force. Wisdom, compassion, will. He understood in an instant. When your thoughts carry wisdom, your words carry compassion, and your actions carry divine will, you are aligned. You are whole. Sunrise, the sanctuary evolves again. From that point forward, the sanctuary became a school of integration. People came not to escape their lives, but to embody them more fully. Workshops began on balancing intellect and emotion. Circles opened for speaking truth without harm. Service projects launched where students practiced mindful action in the world. The triangle had moved from symbol to lifestyle. And Elliot? He began writing again, not blueprints, but poetry. I am not here to create structures. I am here to awaken architects. Not of buildings, but of lives. Chapter 6. 5. The Bridge of Freedom. 5 is the number of freedom, but also of chaos. It is the sacred pivot, where the soul must choose, evolve or repeat. The winds changed on the 5th moon after the ceremony of threes. There was something electric in the air, unpredictable, volatile, liberating. 5 had entered the sanctuary, not like a guest, but like a storm, where 3 brought harmony and 7 whispered secrets. 5 came with a drumbeat and a dare. Tornado the first fracture. The sanctuary had grown. More seekers arrived. Voices grew louder. Visions clashed. Some wanted expansion, new branches, digital platforms, media outreach. Others longed to preserve the quiet, the sacred simplicity. Elliot stood between them, torn. One night in meditation, he saw a vision. A bridge over water. At the center, a fork. Left led to structure, right led to mystery. He heard, 5 is not a direction. It is the crossroads. Fire the test of fire. A fire broke out in the east wing. No one was hurt, but the structure suffered. Ash filled the sky for days. It wasn't just wood that burned, it was attachments, plans, and the illusion of permanence. Isabel said quietly, shedding has begun. Let the fire be teacher, not enemy. In the ashes, a single beam remained untouched, charred, but intact. On it, someone had carved months earlier. Freedom is not escape. It is responsibility chosen. Dove the visitor called, wind. One morning, a woman arrived, barefoot, wrapped in flowing indigo cloth. She called herself Wind. No one saw her arrive. No one knew her real name. But her presence was undeniable. She moved through the sanctuary like a question, never answering, always listening. Wind spoke in paradoxes. To hold nothing is to hold everything. Freedom isn't found, it's remembered. The prison is never the world, only your reaction to it. She taught nothing in classes. But somehow, everyone learned. One student wept, saying, I was chasing freedom, but all I did was run in circles. She taught me to sit still. Chains of the mind. During a group meditation, Elliot saw 5 glowing symbols appear above him, each pulsing with a lesson. The chain of approval, the need to please. The chain of control, the need to dominate outcomes. The chain of comparison, the need to compete. The chain of fear, the need to avoid discomfort. The chain of the past, the need to relive old pain. He wept. I thought I was free because I walked away from the world. But I carried it all with me, in my mind. The true prison was internal. Night bridge crossing the inner bridge. Wind appeared beside him. You're ready, she said. Freedom is not the absence of chains, but the awareness of them, and the choice to stop dancing to their music. She led him to the riverbank, the same one from his vision. There stood a real bridge, one he'd never seen before. It stretched across the water to a misty grove beyond. At the center of the bridge, she stopped him. This is the 5th gate, she whispered. Cross it not for escape, but for integration. He stepped forward. The wind howled. The bridge trembled. And the moment he released all expectations of who he should be, what the sanctuary should become, what the journey should look like, the storm stopped. The sky cleared. and the grove beyond was golden. Butterfly rebirth through 5. When Elliot returned, he was different. He no longer feared conflict. He let others lead. He said, yes, with presence. And, no, without guilt. He taught only one new class. Freedom. The art of sacred responsibility. In it, he asked 5 questions. Where are you still performing? What are you unwilling to feel? What lies do you call protection? What truths scare you most? What would you do if nothing owned you? Not fear. Not past. Not ego? Paint palette. The sanctuary shifts again. Under the influence of 5. The sanctuary became dynamic. Roles rotated. Students became teachers for a week. Leadership shared in circles, not ladders. Some resisted. Some left. But those who remained discovered something extraordinary. Freedom is not a final state. It is a daily practice. A living choice. Railway track. The path ahead splits. One day, Elliot stood before a gathering. We've built much, he said, but now, we must let it evolve. He presented 2 paths. One for those who wanted to anchor the sanctuary into the earth, build schools, hospitals, and community centers rooted in sacred principles. Another for those called to walk, to become wanderers of light. Traveling from place to place. Carrying wisdom into chaos. He smiled. Both are sacred. Both are necessary. 5 reminds us. No freedom without movement. No movement without courage. Wind face wind's farewell. Before she vanished, wind left a note carved into a tree. Freedom is not in the leaving. It is in the way you stay. Conclusion. The sacred spiral continues. From the first whisper of awakening to the final echo of transformation. This journey has been one of deep remembering. Through the symbolic power of numbers, sacred archetypes, and spiritual teachings, we followed the soul's path from initiation to liberation. We stood beneath the moon of the mystic, where intuition was born. This journey was never linear, it was a spiral. A return to self. A homecoming to the eternal truth that lies quietly within. The spiritual path is not about becoming more. It is about remembering who you are without the noise. As the seasons of life shift, so too does the call. Now, a new beginning awaits, not in fantasy or escape, but in daily devotion, in the way we breathe, in how we love, in the courage to face ourselves with honesty and compassion. Seedling the road ahead, whether you choose the path of stillness or the path of movement. Know this: you are not alone. Each number, each chapter, each lesson was a mirror, a reminder, a guidepost. Now, the teachings must take root in action. Cultivate your spiritual practice, not as routine, but as sacred conversation. Build bridges, not walls, between heart and mind, soul and society. Use your power not to control, but to uplift. Anchor your freedom not in escape, but in presence. Honor the journey of others, even when it differs from yours. The soul does not seek perfection, it seeks alignment. Glowing star, join the movement. The road to tranquility. If this journey has spoken to your spirit, if these words have stirred something ancient and true within you, then your next step is clear. Join us on the road to tranquility, a sacred space for seekers, mystics, healers, and wanderers of light. Subscribe to our channel for weekly spiritual guidance, mystical teachings, meditations, and transformative insights that help you walk in wisdom, purpose, and peace. Herb, let us grow together. Milky Way, let us awaken together. Dove, let us remember who we are, together. Because the road to tranquility is not a destination. It is a way of being. The spiral continues.